Yes, my name is Kuldeep Singh Randhawa. I've actually made this video to introduce the website realrandhawa.com. On the website, there's a subsection called 1+1 analysis. I need to talk about that in some detail to take it further. So I suggest you first go and read that section or that page of the website. But before I talk about the concept itself, I need to talk about another engineering concept. It's called the concept review, that is known to most engineers. When professional engineers undertake a design, they have to understand the basic concepts on how a structure would take a certain load. Just to give you an example of a beam being designed, an engineer may conceptualize the loads as D plus L. So D being the dead load, L being the live load, and both of these loads act on top of the beam, pushing the beam downwards. So in the case of the discipline process that I was subjected to, in the matter of APEC BC versus Randhawa, which held in April of 2005, the whole process started in 2003, of course. The report that was used, the load case that was used by Paul Hu was the author of this expert report, which was full of errors, by the way, so the Engineering Association should have really thrown it out and said, no way are we going to proceed with this. But we have a body here which doesn't care about regulation. What it cares about is putting good engineers out of business. It's a corrupt nation, and it's corrupt because of the institutions being so corrupt. And so this load case that he had in the report was H plus W. H being the hydrostatic pressure of the water, which is inside the tank. W being the wind pressure. Now, of course, I want to say here that there was actually no tank even built. Okay? Let's get that out of the way. But I have to talk about a water tank here because the report was about a water tank. So that load case of H plus W cannot take place. It's very simple to understand. If you can imagine, you take a glass of water, so the water is inside the glass, and you blow over this glass of water. The wind which is coming, or the air pressure that's leaving the mouth, will not result in entering into the body of water of the glass. It cannot happen. And so it's a load case which was invalid. And so the concept review was one of the allegations against me, that I didn't do a concept review. In the association accepting this fraudulent report from Paul Hu that was full of errors, the association, the peers, the lawyer for the association itself, APEC BC, Robert Hunter, they did not understand what a concept review was, because it was breached by Paul Hu. He didn't understand what a concept review was. If he had, he would not have that load case in there of H plus W, which does not exist for the design of a water tank. Taking it further, Paul Hu used a building code to do the assessment of this failure analysis of a water tank. A water tank is not a building. So he used an inappropriate design code for this analysis to prove it had failed. Setting aside, of course, that this engineer, Paul Hu, may have been the engineer involved in this other failure that took place. And until we don't have proper discovery and investigation, we will never know. But that's why you have the Engineers Act. That's why you have an association which is saying that it must investigate all engineers who have done misconduct. But when an institution has involved itself in crimes, it doesn't function as a regulatory body. This is why I was filing reports to the police in Burnaby. And this has been going on for years now. I've been reaching out to politicians, I've been reaching out to the institutions, and all these institutions are now working together as one to destroy my life. Because they have to corrupt the person who's around you, whether it's the partners, whether it's the family. And I won't talk about the family so much here, because when 10, 15 years goes by, no one even listens to the truth, then the wife will give up, or the brother will take advantage. I don't know really what's happened to the degree. From a legal standpoint, we need to do a proper evaluation of everything now. So that is what the concept review is. So association did not understand concept review, but yeah, the allegations against me was that I didn't understand a concept review. When the concept review was done by the previous engineer who had passed away, it was an existing design, so the concept review was done by the previous engineer. So none of these arguments were valid, which are totally irrelevant from an engineering point of view. But when an association is corrupt and not interested in regulation, it's not going to take anything which is rational. It wants to listen to lies because it's involved in fraud. Then they want to cover themselves by doing further scams. So the 1+1 analysis is another concept of justice that I'm introducing here. We all know that 1+1 is 2. As children, that is probably the first sum that we learn from age 5 years maybe. So if it's understood by children, which is something so basic, there's a doctrine called patently obvious. Something which is so obvious that a lawyer can say, look, we don't need to even go to court for this thing. This is so obvious. We know that Mr. Randhawa is not guilty of this crime, or this investigation, or this failure. Let's end it right now. I'm taking it even further and introducing another term, which is blatantly obvious. This is a situation where 100 people know that there's some wrong happening to Mr. Randhawa, and you're remaining silent, and you're not speaking out for the person who's in the right position. That is why I've had to introduce the 1+1 analysis, because it's something that is so obvious, it's patently obvious, and it's blatantly obvious, and something that is understood by a child should be understood by a judge. So that's how we can measure the degree of corrupt nation and how far it's gone, and how many people are so corrupt in the courts that, if I can compare the analogy of a barrel full of apples which are rotten, I would like to think that there's some good judge still remaining in the court system in BC. Prove it to me. Write to me and explain to me, how do you fill up a water tank without pipes? How do you turn a car without a steering wheel? How do you drive a car that hasn't got any tires? These are obvious statements that one can make to explain to you. And that's really what the 1+1 analysis is to take home and make you realize that how wrong you are in this country called Canada. And so you can make some statement and say, based upon the 1+1 analysis, we know that a building code cannot be used for the design of a water tank, because a water tank is not a building. Paul who? Did he not know this? How far have you gone? Were you so corrupt? Were you entrapped into something here? Were you pressurized? Were you oppressed? Or were you just incompetent? I need to know, under professional courtesy, what you're aware of. I don't care about some agreement that you've signed where you have to remain silent. And don't rely on the fact that some judge is going to protect you, because some of these judges are going to be removed. And with that, I will leave this nation with a final message that the 1+1 analysis has to be developed further and put into an article, and that article will be then distributed to the institutions in Canada, especially the law enforcing agencies. So all these people, it doesn't matter if it's 100 people or 1,000 people, if you've not spoken the truth about my case and you've concealed something, you are all going to have to pay damages under the rule of law that this country was established on. At the present time, we have the rule of tyranny. That's all I'm going to say about the 1+1 analysis. Change is on its way. My final message in this particular video to all those victims: don't be disheartened, don't lose faith, and don't resort to violence. Change is taking place. Thank you. Just go on to the conclusion, and then let's get to work here and put this country on the right tracks. Thank you very much.